On this episode of the Whiskey Tornado, we review Elijah Craig 18 Year. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Whiskey Tornado. I'm your host, Lance. Today, I am really excited to be reviewing Elijah Craig 18 for you guys. Huge thanks to Ray at Harvest Market for hooking me up with this bottle. This is actually one I've never reviewed and never owned. I've never even been able to try this at a bar. So I've heard a lot of differing opinions on it. Some people absolutely love it, go crazy for it. Other people crap all over this bottle, as it is coming in at 90 proof. This particular bottle was bottled on 8/5 of 21. Now, I will tell you guys, I am a huge fan of Elijah Craig, especially the Elijah Craig barrel proof offerings. I absolutely love them. Regular Elijah Craig, I'm a little iffy on. It's okay, but I prefer a little bit higher proof. So just keep that in mind when I'm reviewing this. The newer you are into bourbon, the more you're going to like those proof points around 100 proof or less. The more you've been into bourbon, the more you're going to like those proof points over 100 proof. This is coming in at 90 proof. So I'm guessing I'm not going to be crazy about this bottle, but we'll see. For those of you new to the Whiskey Tornado, I will quickly explain our scoring system. If you've heard this a million times, just check out the timestamps below and skip ahead to the section you want to see. Here on the Whiskey Tornado, I have 7 categories. I rank 0 to 1, 0.5 being average. We have 2 handicapped categories. Those are appearance and availability. Then we move on to the nose, palate, finish, body, and value. At the end, we add all those scores up. Any score of a 3 or better is bar worthy. Any score of 4 or better is bunker sum, just in case the bourbon you love is no longer made. All right, with all that being said, let's get into the appearance of Elijah Craig 18 Year. All right, for all you whiskey nerds who really want to break this bourbon down, we're going to go through each of these sections. Let's start with the appearance of this. We'll start at the top and work our way down on the bottle. The cork, first of all, I actually like the cork. It's got the little Elijah Craig gold emblem etched into the cork there. They're using a real cork. That's nice. The spout, I'm not crazy about. The spout on the Elijah Craig 18 is fat and round. On the regular Elijah Craig and Elijah Craig barrel proof bottles, that spout is beautiful. It's really easy to pour. It doesn't dribble all over the glass. So I'm not crazy about the spout on the Elijah Craig. But the Elijah Craig 18 bottle, I like it. I like the blue label down here that tells you when it's bottled and what barrel you're coming from. So all of that I like. It's just okay, a little better than average, but nothing crazy, nothing spectacular. Especially for an 18-year bourbon, you'd think they'd want to, you'd think that they'd want to represent their artwork a little better. Bourbon is art, and you'd think the bottle, you'd want to represent that. But it being an 18-year bourbon, I will say the bottle looks a little older, so maybe that's just paying homage to that. But we're going to give the appearance a 0.6, just a tad bit better than average. All right, moving on to availability. These are allocated. I have seen them on shelves. I've just never really wanted to spend the $150 to $200 for them. They're not impossible to find, but they are definitely very hard to find, way less than average. We're going to give the availability a 0.2. All right, let's get into the good stuff. Let's talk about the nose, guys. The nose is really nice. I love it. I'm a big Heaven Hill Elijah Craig fan, and this is giving me those notes that I love in an aged Elijah Craig. You get that dusty rickhouse right off the bat. You get caramel. There's definitely a nice honey note there that I always get on Elijah Craig that I love. and then just a slight bit of nuttiness. Not nuttiness to the point that you get on some Jim Beam products, but just a nice nuttiness there. But that dustiness from that 18 years, it's showing age. There's no like dank wood, kind of moldy funk to it. It's just a nice sugary oak, which is what I love. The nose is really fantastic. If I was smelling this and didn't know what it was, I would be excited to take a drink. So this is spectacular for me on the nose. I'm going to give it a 0.8. All right, guys, let's move on to the palate. So here on the Whiskey Tornado, we're going to take 3 sips. I'll tell you what I taste on the first, second, and third sip. Swirl around our glass a little bit. First sip. A little bit drying on the palate. I didn't get not a lot of complexity. That was all, the first sip was all sugary oak to me. All right, let's go second sip here. Again, you get a lot of that sugary oak, a little bit of that dusty rickhouse that I was getting on the nose. Caramel, just a little bit though. The sugary oak is what dominates for me. And then on the back end, I'm getting just the faintest, like black anise, black licorice, just a little bit. And man, there aren't many things as a fat kid that I dislike. Black licorice is one of the few flavors I do not like. And I got just a hint, not enough to spoil this completely for me, but just a hint on the back end. It's all sugary oak to me, caramel, and then just on the tail end, a little bit of that black licorice note that I just do not like, but not enough for me to say this is crap whiskey. All right, third sip, guys. Same thing for me. Not much is changing. It's not evolving. It's staying the same. We're talking about sugary oak, a little bit of caramel, and again, that black licorice note on the back end. It is a little drying on the palate. Not too drying on the palate. I'm sure watering this down helps with that because you got the 18 years in oak, which is a long time for a bourbon. You know, you think you're going to age something for 18 years, those wood tannins you think would really start shining through, and it'd be really tannic and drying on your palate. It is a little bit drying, but it's not off-putting. But this is thin. It's thin. There's not much body to it. There's not much complexity to it, to be honest. You don't get those like typical honey sweet notes that you find in some other Elijah Craig. There are no fruit notes in this. Now, these are single barrels, so it's going to vary, I'm sure, from batch to batch. This is the only one I've had. Some Elijah Craig, when I can pick up fruit notes in addition to that nuttiness, that rickhouse, that honey, then I am all in. And this is very, it's just not complex at all. It's all sugary oak to me, which I would kind of expect in an ultra-aged bourbon. I mean, honestly, this is exactly what I expected this to be. I've seen people say, oh, Elijah Craig's my favorite. It's the greatest thing in the world. And I could see that if you were newer to bourbon or you just really loved oak in your bourbon. This is something that goes down really easy. It's really smooth for people who love saying things are smooth and judge a whiskey on how good it is by how smooth it is. And generally you see that in people who are newer to bourbon, which is fine. If you're newer to bourbon and you're just looking for a bourbon that doesn't fight back with you and doesn't make your chest squeeze real bad and you don't want a long finish, all of those things, then this might be something you really like, especially if you really love those heavily oaked notes. This isn't heavy oaked like you might get in a craft type bourbon where you start picking up youthful notes and it tastes like you're eating sawdust. That's not the kind of wood I'm talking about. This is much more of a sugary oak, not that like fresh cut wood oak. Fresh cut wood oak I'm definitely not about. Sugary oak I can handle more and appreciate it, but I want it mixed in with things. I want some flavor. I want some fruit notes and some sweetness and some baking spices and a little sugary oak without it being too tannic. This is just very one note to me. It's not horrible, but it's not great. It's not shining through. This is just an average bourbon to me. Nothing special. You know, you're talking about 18 years, so they watered it down in order to get the most bottles possible to us and sell the most to us. So I understand why it's watered down. I just don't think they did it any service watering it down to this proof point. So I'm going to give it an average score, maybe even less than average. I think I am going to give it less than average. Let me take one more. This is like 0.4 to 0.5 for me. It's just not that great. It's not something like if I drank it, I'd be like, oh, that's just crap whiskey. But for an 18-year Elijah Craig, I just expect more. The sugary oak that's there, that's good. It's not offensive. So I'm going to give it a 0.5. I'm really wavering on 0.4 and 0.5 on this, but I'll give it an average score of a 0.5. The finish to me is short. It's less than average. It's just, you know, there's a little bit of barrel spice on the back end, not much, and then it's that sugary oak, and it goes away really quickly because it's so watered down, because it's so thin. So I'm going to give the finish less than average, a 0.3 on the finish. All right, moving on to the body. Again, it's thin. It's not very mouth coating. It's just again, not that great. It's less than average. We're going to give the body a 0.4. All right, moving on to value. I bought this for $154. Now, for me, it is cool to have an 18-year bourbon in my collection. And if I have someone newer to bourbon over, it will be great to say this is what an ultra-aged bourbon tastes like. This is going to help them identify those tasting notes of sugary oak and a little bit of age, smelling what that dusty rickhouse smell smells like. All of those things. I think it's great to have in your library. But when you're talking about a 90 proof bourbon for $154, it's just too watered down. It's just not that good. So I'm gonna give the value at $154 a 0.3. I understand that it's ultra aged, but what's the point of having ultra aged bourbon if you're gonna water it down to a proof point that makes the bourbon average at best? All right, guys, so that brings our overall score for Elijah 18 to a 2.7, making it, in my humble opinion, not bar worthy. Now, huge asterisk on this. It is bar worthy if you want it for the reasons I said. If you want an ultra-aged bourbon, because as the years go on, we are running out of ultra-aged bourbon. Distilleries are not going to have them. So to have an 18-year bourbon on your bar is fantastic, if for nothing else, to help people figure out what those tasting notes are, what that ultra-aged bourbon tastes like, what that sugary oak tastes like, what an aged bourbon that kind of gives you a little extra tannic notes and dries out your palate tastes like. It will help them in their bourbon journey. For that fact, I do think this is bar worthy. But this is not a bourbon I am going to reach for on a regular basis or want to sip or want to enjoy. It's just not. I'm only going to have this on my bar to share with people when they come over to say, hey, here's what an 18-year bourbon tastes like. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you've had Elijah Craig 18, please let me know what you think. I'm sure that I'm going to get crucified on this review, but that's okay. I can take it, guys. You can fire away. If you want more information on Whiskey Tornado, merch, glass, Patreon, barrel picks, all that kind of stuff, go to whiskeytornado.com. You can find everything about our channel there. Hope I help you guys decide what to buy, what to leave on the shelves. Until next time, cheers, everybody. We're going to drink the last of this 18-year, some aged bourbon. It's just average at best, guys. Sorry.
Then